Okay, folks, good morning. Sunday edition, Sunday 3-day weekend edition of painting Byzantine stuff. And on a little earlier than I expected. Well, I woke up a little earlier than I expected. I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning with an alarm. This morning it was before 5 a.m. And I'm like, the heck with this. I also go to sleep a lot earlier than most people. Although I was probably pushing 10:30 last night. So let me put some of these things away. And this doesn't, little tripod I use here for the still shots. And speaking of still shots, I still have this set up where I did the still shots of my army yesterday. A little behind the scenes thing here. And this is a little setup that I use when taking pictures of the army. It is just a little painting that I did, and I cover half of it up with some blocked up, and here's the figures on them. So, doesn't look that good right now because of the lighting, but that's all it is. I recommend that people do little backdrops. They're super easy to do. This one in particular is painted with craft paints with zero skills. I shouldn't say that zero skills, but I never painted like freeform stuff. And it's real easy to do. And it makes your pictures look a lot better. So anyhow, that is what we were going to have to do. And take that thing apart so we can, it's kind of in the way. I did pick up the painting desk some. But I always recommend people do that because I've been painting for a long time before I realized that that's probably a good idea to do. I watched a YouTube video on it, a professional painter that was, painting like an actual backdrop, and I'm like, I should do that for the figures. Let me see if I can adjust this so it's not crimping this power cord. There we go. That's a little better. But yeah, that's all this is. Man, it looks so damn yellow in the video. That's all this is just a little piece of felt that's multicolored and put it on a backdrop. Okay. And by the way, I think I'm going to keep this thing. I'm not going to glue it together. I'm going to keep it just in separate pieces because I can pack it away. I think it'll travel a lot better. And I like the idea that if you've got like a heavy foot infantry that's behind them, I can adjust this and put this in a place where it's not going to destroy my stuff. Because that kind of stuff happens all the time. So I think keeping this loose is probably the way forward for me on this thing. Because I really wanted to keep this artillery piece within the confines of the stand, but there's no feasible way to do that. So, good morning, Nordic. So let's get this stuff out of the way. And we'll just move it from the painting desk. I'm gonna go put this back here. And then we can get started on where we left off with the Normans. Everybody's favorite neighbors. Also known as the Island French. Pooter's running kind of warm. It's odd. Okay. So yesterday we did paint one Norman completely done. Norman the Norman. And Mr. Dirk, welcome. The Dirk of New Zealand. Sounds like a weapon you find. We just uncovered the Dirk of New Zealand. And here's the other one that we're doing. So we're going to hop to and get this guy finished. And then we'll have 2 Normans. 2 of 6. Now we picked all this stuff up. We put all the brushes we were using in one place. Yeah, I gotta pick up this area from time to time just to be efficient. I can't stand looking for stuff and not finding it. It's like incompetence. It is a TTG figure. It is. All my Normans will be TTGs. They're old school. If I was buying them from scratch, I would use Forged in Battle for a lot of my troops. But I already have them. People gave them to me. I see no reason to throw them away, give them away, sell them. I think they'll just paint up just fine. And as I mentioned before, I kind of get a thrill out of making these second tier figures look good. And I call them second tier because they are. They're not the best figures out there. Nobody goes, oh, I can't wait to buy a Tabletop Games army. I mean, they're not horrible, but, I don't know that they excite that many people. Now, I personally don't have a problem with them. I actually like the way the pose of their horses is. The way the pose of their horses are. There we go. And I haven't had much coffee yet, so. But I realize that they're not top dogs as far as state-of-the-art figures. Doesn't matter to me. I've used figures as bad, and bad is subjective, as some irregular figures, and they all paint up fine. And I already have them. I mean, I just don't see any reason to, keep up with the Joneses. Oh, there's new figures. Dump all the old ones. And I experienced that when I was working on my Turks, my Ottoman Turks. I was trying to get all my favorite figures I could from Ottoman Turks. And then as soon as I got done, Khorasan Miniatures decides to come out with Ottoman Turks. Now, I am not a Khorasan fan. I don't dislike them because I've never painted them. They just showed up on the scene too late for me. I already had all my stuff, And that's what I realized. I can't just keep up with the Joneses. You need to do what you're happy with and move on. So, got a lot of them painted as Crusaders. The Arabs are really nice. The Arabs are really nice. And sometimes they have funky proportions on things. I think their horses are proportioned well. And I think the horses are proportioned well, but their figures sometimes are not. But again, I shouldn't knock them too hard because it's better than what I'd be doing. Maybe not with a little bit of practice, but I have no interest in doing that. I can't be into everything. There it is again. Mine are sold. They're painted with Humbrol paints, pre-electric acrylics. If acrylics had never been invented, I'd still paint. Although I might be tempted to use oil paints because if they're going to take forever to dry, look forged and battle miniatures. They look pretty nice, but were kind of pricey. So the first figures I got into, and you remember I'm only talking about 2004, because prior to 2004 I didn't do any 15 ancients, medievals, any of that stuff. Any pre-world. Well, I was only doing World War II, and I was doing World War II in 20 mil. So World War II figures were the only figures I've ever painted that are actually figures, like people. Because when you're doing World War II, it's mostly, vehicles, tanks and ships, basically. Trucks. That's all I'm doing. So the first army that I paint, so I'm building my first army, and I come across this company called Old Glory. And the good thing about Old Glory is they gave you multiple figures in a pack. Now the packs were massive. They were 50 figure packs at the time, and I bought a lot of them because I wanted, to mix and match my feudal Spanish. That's what I was building. And let's paint his helmet while we're chit-chatting. And I liked them not because they were awesome looking, although they didn't look bad. I actually happen to like their horses quite a bit. Old Glory horses look like, if you stand in front of them, you will get mowed down. They definitely look knighty, many of their poses. But they had a variety of figure poses, unlike, say, Essex, that only sometimes had like 2. And Essex, at the time, before I played DBA, I ended up getting some Armati figure packs for some Renaissance Spanish. And Essex did a horrible job, and I mean a horrible job, of supplying me with the correct figures. They did such a horrible job of not supplying me with correct figures that I basically blackballed them for a long time. I won't buy Essex figure packs at all. I won't do it. I have no problem with their figures, mixing and matching, but you'll end up getting something you need 12 figures of, and they make different poses and they give you one. And it's something like, feudal knights or something like that you want different pose guys. And, so I want control over poses. I've painted a lot of figures recently with Essex figures, and I'm very happy with them, but I want to choose who and who's on the stand. Hey, I'm going to spend 2 to 4 hours on a figure. I want to pick exactly who it is. But anyhow, Old Glory allowed you to get multiple poses for a lot of these troop types. So I really liked Old Glory. And that was, there was, at the time, let's see, you had stuff that was already second tier at that point, like irregular figures. And with that said, I've painted some irregular figures, and they paint up great, and some of the poses are fine, but some of them are just not very good. So, when I'm doing this stuff, and Coruscant doesn't show up on the scene until, I'm going to say 2013 or something like that, I've already got a lot of stuff. And they didn't really start expanding until a couple of years. And I guess they've been really successful, because I've never seen a company expand that fast. But then, by the time I was in it, Essex had already built all their figures, basically. I think since I've been painting Ancients and Medievals, they've added some Grenadine troops and maybe a couple other things. But, Essex was already fully flush by the time that I was doing them. But by the time I was starting. But anyways, that's why I have what I have, and through years, I have picked up figures that people didn't want at flea market. They're not going to sell the latest and the greatest. They're going to want to, unless they're totally getting out of it. And I've just picked up things, and I just don't see any reason to get rid of what I have. I want to use them. So, anyhow, and the difference in sizes, like these Normans happen to be kind of small. I don't care. They'll be fine. I did not replace the lances on these guys. I don't think they needed to. They were pretty hard. So I think they're probably okay. You should get some sort of royalty every time you use that quote. I don't know. You're starting to get into like territory where, you know, we got to get lawyers involved. And no, they cause enough trouble. S6 never did it for me. Visually speaking, for miniatures, since I'd be starting from scratch, whatever mood hits, I would look at Forge and Battle, Coruscant. Coruscant. The Forged and Battle figures I have seen online look consistent and they look very good. Coruscant, because they use multiple sculptors, aren't consistent. And some of their horses are just too damn big. If you go back and watch the video that we shot a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the one called Allies, Joe ends up using his Serbian Empire army, and their knights are with Coruscant miniatures, and they are massively big. They are extremely long, and I don't know how in the hell he was able to get them on the stand, but he did. Okay, this last guy was a light blue, so let's go with a light green for this guy. And they're not consistent. I've seen some Coruscant stuff I've really liked. I've seen some Coruscant stuff that I would hate to paint because it looks weird. You know, and they're here in the U.S., so you would think shipping would be good, but I don't even care about shipping anymore. You know, I'm like, I'm going to get what I'm going to get when the time comes to get it. I'm not pre-buying stuff. Hey, we've got a 20% off sale for Essex. I don't give a shit. I don't need the armies now. I'm not going to buy them. I mean, I've got 80 pounds of lead. You know, I can get started on whatever it is that I need and then wait till the last minute and then buy the stuff I need to have. So, that's the phase that I am in my life. Light green blue. This isn't greenish enough. This is this is definitely a Western Approaches type color. It actually looks nicer on the camera than it does in real life. It actually looks pretty nice on the camera. Western Approaches. I love that paint scheme for those British destroyers. Commonwealth destroyers. Sorry, I don't want to poo-poo the Allies. I love World War II Commonwealth destroyers. They have so much character. You're currently painting Forged in Battle successor cavalry for a later Macedonian army. Yeah. Rumor has it that's where I'm going to go next. Shh, don't tell anybody. I actually got a book in the mail yesterday started reading it, which of course put me to sleep. No, it was good on the successors. You know, I've got basic information, above basic knowledge on them, but I really need to dive deep in them because that's some really interesting. I want to do some battles with that stuff. I want to create some historical battles with it. So we're and Mitch has a lot of those armies. He could probably field 4 of them at once. I've got the Ptolemaics that need to go up to 3.0 standard. That looks likely what I'm going to do after the Byzantines is finally get them up to 3.0 standard, which involves painting 1 or 2 solid auxilia and a solid warband. And then they'll be up to where they need to be. Now, I pulled the brushes that I used that were small yesterday. Oh, I didn't reach deep enough. Here's another one. There we go. There she is. All right. And here's the first paint pot. Is it really a pot if it's shaped like this? The first one for the dust clutter, because it always seems to be what happens. But when I bought my Ptolemaics, it was pre-Mitch. And I had bought a Seleucid army as well to do. Now, I don't think I'm going to do the Seleucids because Mitch already has them, but I'm probably going to do other successor stuff, so. And not have to buy anything. I mean, I got the figures for them, but I've got another army's worth of tin soldier figures, which are definitely old school figures, but I really like the way they look, and they look weird sometimes. But that's, I think, the direction I'm going to go in. I'm more interested in painting armies now that have a lot of scenario potential to do historical battles with. And build a lot more most options than before. Before I would just pick the best way to run the army, and that's how I'd paint it. Now I'm painting options because I may need 13 or 14 elements in a historical battle. I may need to use them in less than ideal composition because that's what they did historically. They didn't have, like for instance, this army, instead of having these Norman knights, can have Turkish light horse archers. Now, why would you ever do that? Well, it might be a historical battle where that's what they used. So, definitely, that's why this project's going to end up turning into like 15 or 16 stands or something like that. I forget exactly what it is. It might even be as many as 17. But anyways, that's the background information of what I have and why. And why I'm not dying to, if I was going to say, hey, let's build a Anglo-Saxon army, I would do a morph where I could do Anglo-Saxons and Anglo-Danes. I would use forged in battle figures because those guys look really good for an army that, sorry for you folks in England, but the Anglo-Saxons just don't look that cool in general. They just don't interest me by how they look. And those forged in battle figures make them interest me in how they look. They look really freaking good. And, I wouldn't just build the Anglo-Danes because they're around for not a very long period of time. But you can make the earlier list. They certainly didn't change that much in the look and use those same figures. So if I was going to do something like that, I would just go and get the forged in battle figures. And I don't care that I'm going to have extra troop types or I'm going to have to order, one pack just for the Saloy and have a lot of extra figures. That stuff doesn't bother me. What bothers me is buying things and they're not doing anything with them. That bothers me. So, because I look at it, I'm like, okay, you could buy a figure. I think they're 24 figure packs. You can buy one pack and only use like 4 figures out of them. But another one you used every figure out of. So it evens out. It washes out. I don't have a problem with it. So. Paint bottle. Okay, not a, they call them pots in England. We call pots something different here. Which is strange because I actually had a dream about that. I had a weird effing dream last night that I just woke up from. It involved me. I borrowed somebody's car. It was like I was test driving somebody's used car, and he had like a vape thing. And he had like marijuana in it. I'm not that I know anything about either one of those two things, but strange. No, I didn't take a hit. I don't even do drugs in dreams. I do drugs. It's caffeine. And on rare occasion, alcohol. Aiming to do all the Macedonian pike-based army TVAs. You have had enough pike, elephant, auxilia, Saloy for any two of the armies, but I really need stands for different types of cavalry. That sounds boring to some people. I think it sounds pretty interesting. I think it sounds pretty interesting to say make Demetrius's army, okay? And then make it specifically Demetrius's. So, remember, don't put any towers on elephants until Pyrrhus is over with. He supposedly was the first one to use them. Supposedly. Let's get some white, which of course dried out already. So yeah, I'm more interested in building the armies to do the historical scenario. I really enjoy the historical scenarios that Connor did, even though some of them were frustrating. I liked it. I didn't feel like I had to keep score. You know what that allowed me to do? That allowed me, I don't know if it allowed Mitch to do it as well, but it allowed me to feel like I could give the other guy hints on his play when I saw something and maybe he didn't, to make a cooler game. And it's not that I'm super competitive, but I do, when I build an army, I do not want them to do poorly because I've spent a lot of hours painting them. That's it. I don't care how many more games I lose. I just don't want an army I just got done to be a bunch of losers. That's it. I've lost thousands of games. Is it considered thousands if you lose more than 1,000 but less than 2? I'm going to say so. Thousands of games. And, losing another one doesn't really matter. I just want them to be really close and epic in scope and what happens. And we've had a lot of those recently. All right. What color pants does that guy have? Okay. I don't know that Normans use pants at all, but these guys did. We're going to give this guy like well, we're going to need this color out here, chocolate brown. Good old Iraqi sand. Bought some elephants without towers from museums 18 months ago. Then they released 2 much better ones in their Z range. Yeah, you just need to be happy with what you have. Just finishing up a stand of Blade X. Would that be like those guys that they had in the Aurelian army that had those sticks that they'd beat on people with? Menevlatoy or something? Menbalatoy, or I could maybe say it if I looked at it. Blade Exception. Are they exceptional blades? No, they're the exception to blades. They're a blade with a built-in weirdism. crap. Let's paint his shoes and think about it. What color I'm going to do. Oh. Hey, Tony, when my hiatus from miniatures ends, I'm looking at the possibility of painting some miniatures for a Spanish Reconquista. I'm not going to stop you. That's a really interesting period. For me, anyways. Yes, anti-cataphract legionnaires. I think cataphracts are misrepresented. I think they should have better defense against bows. I don't know. And I'm just talking about DBA. You know, my big problem is, and this is even more so in 2.2, is that Phil has some really good ideas, and he really does. But if you never get to play DBMM or DBM, then all of the full-fledged flavor of the unit type is not apparent. In 2.2, I was annoyed as shit that cataphracts and knights were exactly the same, and even more so that something like an 8-bow and a 4-bow behaved exactly the same in every way, other than an 8-bow being deeper, which was really strange because then you could like put a corner and they could stick out farther outside of terrain. It would be like more useful in terrain, which is counterintuitive. So I was really annoyed by that part of the DBA rules, that it's almost like, oh well, you know, when you grow up and are able to play the big set of rules, the DBM or the DBMM, then you'll get all the bells and whistles and how the thing really be. And the problem is that some of us are just never going to get around to playing that, and it's not because of the more complicated combat. It's because of all the other ancillary things that are so difficult to get right. I remember when I was playing Advanced Squad Leader in the mid-90s, they came out with a computer-aided Advanced Squad Leader thing. And I didn't have it, but a friend of mine did, and he liked using it. And I thought it was mostly unnecessary because ASL wasn't that complicated at the time. But I think that if DBA had had something like that, or DBMM would have something like that, like, okay, check for weather for this. All right, what did you roll? Okay, I rolled a 3. You roll the die, roll 3, you enter it. Okay, it's now going to be raining, and it would tell you what everything was, and so you wouldn't miss a step. I think if there was something like that, I definitely would play a more detailed game. We would definitely play a more detailed game. I think we all appreciate those extra details. It's overwhelming. It's just absolutely overwhelming. So I would like the Blade X's and the Artillery X's and and the Knight Superior and all that stuff. But I can't imagine a more detailed version of Barker's work to have more things to try to look through in the book. And it's not his rules necessarily. It's just that nothing's ever repeated a second time. And it makes you want to pull your hair out trying to find an answer for something, and it's not where you would find it. And, it's not that he doesn't have good ideas. So I don't know if cataphracts have extra details to make them more cataphracty than regular knights in DBMM. I suspect that they do. I guess I gotta feel like I'm blessed just to have those special details that we have in DBA 3.0, because in 2.2 it didn't have any of them. So I'm a big fan of the small differentiation between troop types. They don't have to necessarily be better in every case. As a matter of fact, one thing that seems to be kind of the mantra is that something, you can't be the best at everything. You always have a weakness. So the next rule set I will play will have more of those combat differentiations. Whatever that means. Whether that means we develop something on our own, inspired by Phil Barker's work, and it will say in the rules it's inspired by Phil Barker's work. Of course, it'll be free, so it's not like, oh, you're going to charge, you can't use his name, whatever. I have a problem with not giving people proper credit. I really do. And I don't understand how some people can live with themselves. But they do, apparently, just fine. And, you know, everybody's inspired by somebody else. But, you know, when you create a set of rules, charge for them, and then create stuff like, oh, I can't mention the game it's taken from or the author, so I'll call it a legacy system. That is just horseshit. That is just complete political BS horseshit, you know. Legacy system. So, I don't have anything really bad to say about Phil other than I wish you realized that we can't understand his shit. Or, you know, you think you understand it, you misinterpret it, and you play it not how he intended, and you play a poorer version because of that. In MM, they are quick kill knights. Okay. Cataphracts in MM are superior against archers and most foot, but inferior to other knights. Okay, that's cool. I agree. The man's got some good ideas. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it that he has some good ideas. He's been around, you know. He's been around. And I only got a chance to meet him once. Got no problems with the man. Other than I've seen him play. He doesn't enjoy the game as much as we do. We want to squeeze it for all it's worth. Which I don't have a problem with, as long as you realize that, you know, you are doing gamey stuff. And I think I don't have a problem with that. Trying to get as much as you can out of everything. I think that's less of a problem in DBA than other games because of the pip thing. So in other games, you know, you move everybody as much as you can and everybody is able to move every time. In DBA, sometimes they just don't listen to you. And you get one pip and you can't do everything you want. And I think that is a great equalizer for people's talents when they're playing a game. I think it is a good, makes every game fresh. And I think it takes a lot of things into consideration that are out of your control as an Army commander. And people that are control freaks, it bothers them. I guess I am a control freak though, but I like to, you know, minimize my exposure to chaos. And oh, and another thing. Next game I play, you will not have to make perfect contact to do combat. So that's going to really limit what other games I'm going to play. So if there's a game system that does not have that, I won't be playing it. So that is just too awkward. And other people have told me, well, they did that because you've never played a game that didn't have it. You're right. I've never played a game that didn't have it, but we're not stupid. I mean, I'm sure we could figure it out. And we don't have an agenda because a lot of people create games and they have agendas. And I think we're pretty fair. We may not be the smartest people, but we're pretty damn fair. So, if I was going to make a game system, I wouldn't charge for it. You know, I don't want it published so that you get everything in order. Okay, it's published. And then a week later, oh shit, we need to change this. All right, bring all the copies back. No, I don't want any of that drama. I would want to play a better game. I'm not in it for the money. I only do things I dislike for the money. I dislike going to my normal job. That's why I won't do that for free. Now, this last guy had a red cloth that he's writing on. I don't want to do red for him. I don't want to do green, although I could do a totally different green one. Blue is kind of obvious to do that. Let's do a blue one. Let's do a blue one. Let's not get it too bright. Based on this. Now I may change my mind, do some barbarian stuff, but my successor stuff has been waiting a lot longer than the barbarian stuff has. So I need to look at it from that point. You know, if I keep painting at the pace I'm going, which is a couple armies, I don't think I can reach 3 a year. I just can't. I could say I could get it done and it just wouldn't get done. Then maybe, but we'll just, only thing I can do is paint frequently and not start something else until I'm finished with the thing I started. And I think if I do those two things, that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get. And then just realize I'm not going to be able to get into painting stuff for Gaslands and other games. I'm just, you know, I'm going to do this, and this is what we're going to do. And you just get too much efficient use out of them playing this game. I don't want to paint things for something else bad enough that I'm willing to sabotage my production for this game. Maybe add a little bit more blue and then bring it up from just a tad more. And then bring it up, adding white. But you know, the video ability has definitely increased my interest in this game. You know, and also disinterested my. This is also like I'm less interested in going to conventions. You know, you go to the conventions. How many people am I going to play with? 15 people if I'm lucky. I mean, if I'm extremely lucky. Whereas a lot more people will experience this, you know. And conventions cost a lot of money, you know. I would create my own game because the commercially available games largely not do it for me as a player. That's what certain games I like, but not enough to get me past the rules. If you had to pick one historical period that isn't World War II to solely paint, what would you choose? Define a period. Like I can't pick of all of this. If you know, DBA period's too huge. One period, I don't know. I don't know. It wouldn't be 17th or 18th century, that's for sure. 17th, 18th, or 19th century, definitely not. I would do Renaissance, but I just think that it's just too overwhelming. I need to be like retired now and work on that. And, you know, working on rules is just not therapeutic. Even when you're trying to work on them with somebody who's not argumentative. So I can only imagine what it's like with argumentative people. But paint, I don't know. There's some things, you know, I would say late medievals, but there's some late medievals I don't have any interest in doing. Like, I don't have any interest in doing 100 Years' War. Why? Because everybody does it. And it's only two different nations. It's kind of, there's variations of it and stuff like that, but there's not enough different sides. It wouldn't be biblicals, that's for sure. If I have to limit it to one thing. You know, Dark Ages is pretty interesting, but not typical Dark Ages. Like, I don't really care about English Dark Ages. That's not my people. And they're just kind of, you know, they're not very exciting to me. Fortunately, I don't have to make that decision. That's like one of those, as I like to say, a choice from hell. No matter what you do, no matter what choice you make, you'll be still second guessing yourself. A period of history, say 200 years in length. I don't know if I could do. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could make that choice. I don't know if I could make that choice. 200 years just isn't long enough. Because you could do something like, okay, well, I want to do, you know, Dark Ages, and I want to be able to do Belisarius. Well, if you do Belisarius, then you can't do Basil, the Bulgar Slayer. You know, it's more than 200 years later. So that's 200 years is not a lot period of time pre 1500. Punic Wars or the Crusades? The Punic Wars, 100 Years' War concept. Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem with the 100 Years' War. Is it's too. I haven't played a lot of 100 Years' War conflicts, but I can already see how they go down. I can already see how they play out. The French try to dismount so they can deal with the bowman. If the French don't dismount, they're hosed. Pretty much no matter what. At least in this game system, long bowmen, bowmen anyways can defend against knights just fine. And then you throw them in being long bowmen, oh, they just eat the living, they just eat them for lunch. So then the French have to try to dismount. So it's all a matter of, you got to tease them with being able to, and I've said this before, you play games, and I have never experienced one of these games before, but other people I've played with have. And it was a situation where somebody made the terrain untenable. So for whatever troop type they were doing, like if they were doing a light horse army, and the other army that wasn't light horse had like bowmen and bad going troops, right? So the bowmen and bad going troops army won terrain, and they set it up. And they set up such a forest that the guy who was playing the light horse said, I'm not going to advance in there. And the guy that had all the terrain said, well, I'm not going to advance out. So they drew the game. And I've never had one of those experiences, because you have to have the foresight that when you are the opponent that has the bad going troop types, and you can't put a bunch of terrain down that is absolutely impossible, unfavorable for your opponent to come and get you. You have to give a little bit, or you're going to have a stalemate game. And you got to put yourself in the other shoes. So you have to tease him with the idea that you give them hope to win somewhere, and then you try to capitalize on winning in the other direction. You have to do that, or you're going to have a stalemated game. And I can see 100 Years' War English and 100 Years' War French being exactly that. The English are going to want to win terrain and make it so that it will disrupt the French trying to deploy, and meanwhile just rain up, just freaking pin cushions on them, turn them into pin cushions. And it just turns, I think, a lot of the battles into the same thing. And it's mostly because the 100 Years' War English armies in DBA, at least, are very one-sided. They have a lot of bowmen. They have more than half of their composition is all bowmen, long bowmen at that. And so their entire strategy is going to be around trying to use those guys in combat. You can't just say, well, I'm going to not use half my army. You have to use them. So without playing that matchup a bunch of times, I'm already bored of it. Regardless of the heraldry, which would be awesome to do. I've already played that in my head, and it doesn't sound very exciting, because the 100 Years' War English army is so lopsided. In that they just have a ton of bowmen, even more than my Burgundians. My Burgundians are, my whole strategy playing the Burgundians is you got to use the bowmen. It's half the damn army, I wouldn't look to play a game of 100 Years' War stuff. I'd play the period simply because of heraldry. The heraldry is, there's a ton of info out there. A ton of info out there. Find Dark Ages pretty interesting because all the armies are different. Anglo-Saxons mostly spear, Vikings mostly blade, Welsh are mostly warband, picks, pre-feudal Scots mostly pike. Yeah, but they're all like, the Vikings have a huge advantage. Although, man, I've seen spear. I don't know whether I'm lucky or I'm really good with spear. It's probably both. Mostly lucky. I've kicked some serious ass with spear armies, even against blades. Yeah, the Welsh don't stand a chance. Maybe that's why they didn't take over all of Britannia. Yeah, I don't care for them because it's a period of time that I don't particularly like to read about. There's no known flags for any of them. I'm sorry, that's a big to do for me. And there's no heraldry. I like a period where lots of things are known about how things looked, but I can put my own interpretation on them. When you have to create something from scratch, it's less interesting to me. Now, having said that, I had a freaking blast painting my Irish. But that's one army, not 5, that I have to create something from. It's mostly the flags, though. flags are huge. I mean, every time I've war gamed, I've never been able to use flags. Now it's like, oh, I can do flags. Flags are cool, you know. And there's no doubt that it makes a difference what your heritage is and where you live. There's no doubt about it. I mean, so what color cloth did we use on this guy? All right, we're going to use one that's a little bit grayer on this guy over here. So now, I've said pre-feudal Scots are on my list for a long time, and they still are, because they're going to be just like my Irish. They're going to be an army that needs to look very rustic, very peasant-like, but you also need to make them look interesting so they're not boring. I mean, I freaking love my Irish army, and they are peasants. They are definitely peasants. And how different is that from the color of the horse? It's different enough. We're good. Spears do not get a bonus for double ranks anymore. They get side support. And some people have a problem with that. I like the fact that they get the bonus for the double ranks before, because it was just another way you could play them. Not that it was more powerful, but it was just more options of how to deploy your army. When your only option is like, well, I'll just send them all the way across, game becomes a little bit more boring. So I like the fact that you have to give up frontage and stuff like that. I like lots of different ways to skin a cat. More things for you to cogitate about. And there'd be situations where you wouldn't want to do it. It's not like you always want to do it. And you don't want to give up frontage. So that's why I said I'm a little bit more interested in playing historical battles, because I can do special rules if I need to. I can create one side that has 14 elements and another side 10 if I need to. And, still do this stuff for, tournament purposes, because ultimately, I want to play with my toys. That's what keeps me painting, is I want to play with my figures, and I want other figures to paint, so let me paint them so then I can play with them. If I'm just using somebody else's army, then what's my incentive of even collecting armies and painting them? So... change my answer. Too late. It's already been submitted. I'm going with Dark Ages Britain from 8 to 1600. Can move doing Viking campaigns in Ireland as well. Campaigns against Saxons. Then add the Normans. Okay. Is that your heritage? I'm just curious. I'm going to do Conquest of Mexico just to piss you off. No, that would not be. That would get old too. I can already see that playing out. That's way too difficult of a question. Some people would be happy as a clam. They're just like, oh, I already like playing ACW. I'll play ACW all the time. That's only a period of 5 years or 4, depending on how you. Yeah, I guess 4. You don't. I'll sell you an extra 196 years. To somebody else, the highest bidder. I think you're definitely affected by that, by what your heritage is, what you're interested in. If I had a background, say for instance, that I didn't know what my heraldry was, personally, it would definitely affect what armies I would do. I value that a lot. And it also helps that my heraldry isn't a freaking potted plant. Okay. So I'm definitely affected by that. So because I particularly like mine, and I'm a big fan of heraldry, I definitely would want to do a heraldry period. And I enjoy painting it. I would definitely go towards a heraldry period. So, 1200 to 1400. But I don't want to stick to that. Maybe 1300 to 1500. If I had to choose. If you held a bardiche to my head and I had to choose. But you're affected a lot by where you come from, what your heritage is. Like, I can't imagine being from a place where they didn't use heraldry. Might as well just play World War II stuff then. So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for me. I am German, Dutch, English, Irish, Scottish, and Scandinavian ancestry. Man, everybody wanted to do you. My mother's family hails from northern England and lower Scotland. Northumberland, to be precise. Okay. You would pick the conquest of Mexico. Well, just to piss you off, I'd be liberating your ill-gotten treasure and route back to Spain. Yeah, I would do, if you're doing sailing ships, I would do stuff in the 1500s. Because you could do, assuming they make miniatures for it, you could do freaking Chinese pirates. You could do all kinds of stuff. Turks. The Turks are a good freaking enemy. You gotta admit, that's a good, I think they make a really good enemy. They're interesting. They got a lot of manpower. Varied stuff, cool flags. When you fight them, you get first dibs on the pork. I think they're a really cool, interesting enemy. Very much so. And then you could do galleys and all kinds of stuff. You could do pirates. You could do English. You could do French. I just don't like the whole... I've played too many games where... And it's a problem with the game system where you either shoot at the beginning or the end of your movement phase. And at one point you're not in arc. And then you move through the arc. And then when you're within, and at the end you're not in arc again, so you don't get to shoot. And that's a broken game. That's a no fun game for everybody. Yeah, but I wouldn't want to. I would not want a game Conquest of Mech. It's just. That'd be a good game. That's like, if they did like Saga or something like Saga for Conquest of Mexico. I'm playing Spanish. Why? It's only got to paint 3 guys. You got to paint 300. Joke's on you. Well, I'd have to paint a lot of allies. A lot of allies. So they couldn't have done it without the allies, but they wouldn't have had allies if the Aztecs weren't such dicks to their neighbors. So, it goes both ways. So back to the question of Hannibal versus Alexander. You knew we were going to go there. I'll give you one thing. No, I was just talking about a commander and the commander in the battlefield. Alexander definitely had a more lasting impact than Hannibal. I mean, other than Hannibal, like, you know, getting inside the freaking Roman's head, he really had no lasting impacts. Not like Alexander that had lasting impacts. But I'm just talking about on the battlefield. I don't really, and I do this the way I play DBA. Is your number one job as a commander is to keep everybody in command. You need to be able to like manipulate, be able to coordinate things. If you go off on a tangent, I mean, yeah, you're the biggest freaking badass. Like, there's no doubt about it that Alexander was brave and he was badass and everything. But if the deputy commanders weren't on the ball in his army, things would have just fallen apart. And that's happened in other battles with other commanders where the guy's like, hey, charge, and he takes off somewhere. Who is it? Demetrius that did that at one of the battles. Is he went and he routed a whole wing, and then he came back and they lost the battle because he took off and wasn't able to rally people where you needed them to. And that's one thing I'm thinking of that is a big part, and other games do that, where you can use pip mechanisms to rally hits off of troops and stuff. So then again, it's different ways to skin a cat. Do you want to be a Harbach where you charge your knights and elephants and win? It writes good stories, but what if you lose? Your whole empire crumbles. Like, what would have happened if Alexander would have died at Gaugamela? What would have happened? Well, the Persians would still be screwed because they're, the problem with the Persians is they had this, and it was really interesting reading about this because it was it was a Sassanid problem as well, and it was a problem with the Turks as well. Maybe it's just something of the culture of that part of the world, but you got one guy in charge that has multiple sons, and everything's fine and dandy until that guy dies. And then, they self-purge themselves because there can only be one. And you weaken your empire significantly because of that. And that didn't help. This could be good. What is the one thing you will give me? I'm half Dutch and we still haven't forgiven the Spanish Habsburgs. Well, there's a couple of things that made the and I really like the Habsburg history. I mean, I love playing Spanish Habsburgs. I'm not going to lie to you. We're really bad at spending money. We're really, really, really bad at spending money, and intolerance is not a virtue. Intolerance is not a virtue. But I think that would be a great matchup is 80 Years War. 80 Years War would be awesome. 80 Years War would be absolutely awesome to do. I got troops to do it. I just don't want to commit half my life to come up with rule sets. It'd be awesome. My father's father spoke with a heavy Dutch accent. I really use here accent, Japanese, manner. Fortunately for Alexander, he had excellent sub-commanders that were trained very well and knew how to command and lead their portion. Absolutely. I mean, he couldn't have done it without him. So, there's a video that I'm about a third of the way doing, and I don't remember what the guy's name is because he has a really complicated name. I brought this up last night, and I got another maybe half hour through it yesterday, and I can't even say his name. Let's see if I can tell you what it is. I should be able to do this. Playlists. Okay, it's not my playlist. This is a superb video. I mean, it is unbelievably good. And if you have basic understanding of the successor stuff, it's not complicated. It's not under content. It's not under analytics. All right, let me open up another window. And let me go to YouTube and see if I can access my site. All right, let me go to under my subscriptions. Okay. And it's not here. Under watch later. Okay, here it is. Okay, this video, this is your guys' homework assignment if you're into successors. This is a guy named Thucydides the Historian. Okay, so when you go on YouTube, you want to type in Alexander's Successors Tier Ranking. It's like a 4.5 hour video, and this guy is like a history professor guy who's not boring to listen to. And it is freaking awesome. This video is superb. I've only listened to maybe an hour and a half of it, and I've learned so much about people that I didn't know anything about. So it's going to be really good for filling in the blanks for me. Alexander's Successors Tier Ranking. It's by a YouTuber called Thucydides the Historian. Therscites, the Historian. And it is a great freaking video. About people that you didn't even know about. Because I haven't even gotten all the juicy ones yet. But there's a couple of these tier ranking videos where I saw before where they'll talk about people and they'll rate them like on a scale from A to F on how they did. And it gives you like good comparison to kind of wrap your head around who everybody is. Because some of the guys are really confusing. You just start reading things. You're like, okay, who's Perdiccas and who's Craterus and who's the Antipater? And after you've read it 3 or 4 or 5 times, then it kind of you get used to all the stuff. But that video is incredible for a starting point. So I'm going to go through that, and then I'm going to go through the successor thing because I'm interested in seeing what are the guys that are interesting. It is really hard to start from Plutarch. It's really hard to start from the form of Plutarch because even though Plutarch stuff's really good, it's written at a level that is hard to kind of wrap your head around. And that one is really good. Like, I didn't know anything about this guy named Leonidas. And according to this guy, and I'll say according to this guy because I don't know, maybe he's full of shit. I doubt it. He's a historian, and he does a lot of different videos. And this is actually the first one of his videos I've ever watched, and I will watch more of them because he cusses occasionally. He'll say like, what the fuck was that guy thinking? So I appreciate things like that. It doesn't need to be an entire video of cussing, but I like cursing for adding emphasis and flavor things where it's necessary. So I'm like, okay, well this guy's up with the times. And I didn't know anything about this guy named Leonidas, and who apparently mimicked Alexander in a lot of stuff. So stuff I've learned. Did you know that Alexander supposedly, I did not know this, had 2 different color eyes? I had no idea. Supposedly, according to the experts, I just paint things and I roll dice, and I really like playing games that involve die rolling. I am definitely big on that. Doesn't matter if the dice are out to get you sometimes. They're out to get the enemy, the other guy too. But he supposedly had 2 different color eyes. Did not know that. And he had something that was wrong with his neck or something, a condition. I don't know how consistent it was. But so this guy named Leonidas supposedly people said that he looked like him, like Alexander. And when Alexander passed away, he was one of his bodyguards. He he was referred to as a taller, better-looking Alexander, and according to this guy, he said that when Alexander passed away, he was mimicked some of his mannerisms, and I'm like, well, what mannerisms does Alexander have? Well, he had something with his neck or something that he did. I don't think that it was a Richard III type of, kind of thing, but he had some, according to, and what's really surprising me is I have read, or I have listened to, a 27-hour lecture on Alexander that was extremely interesting, maybe a couple of years ago, and none of this came up. And so I don't know, maybe it's a recent find, maybe it's just bullshit. I don't know. Take everything with a grain of salt, because some people want to, some people out there, I'm not saying this guy in particular, but some people out there want to push an agenda. You guys should know that by watching the news. No matter how you think about it, we're not getting the full story of anything. And I think that's, crap. I don't, I just want to know the truth. So, and, but yeah, I didn't come across any of that stuff in the 26-hour lecture on Alexander. And, I actually have, all right, let's get Nordic all wet. I actually had this given to me, and this is probably what I should do next. Scott gave me this. It was given to him by someone. And I think this is I have no intention of ever playing this game. It's too complicated. But I think this is an incredible resource for creating battles. And that's Great Battles of Alexander. And, obviously, this system's probably really good. I just don't have it in me to learn something. But there's like orders of battles and stuff that you could translate into a DBA style game. And what's in here? Carania, Lysiga, a whole like 12 battles here, including some against the Scythians or something like that. So I probably should take this, and we should probably make historical battles of these in DBA form at some point. He doesn't have two different color eyes there. But yeah, I'm surprised that it doesn't, I've never come across that before. I was reading a book recently that somebody recommended while I was doing one of these, and it's a book called Tyrant, and it actually looks really good. I started reading it, and I got through the first chapter, and I stopped reading it, not because it wasn't a good story, but because, it wasn't something I was working on at the time. So I think when I do its successors, I'll probably read that to and from work at that time, because that's the correct time period. So I've kind of changed to another book that is more appropriate for the time period that I'm doing. But what caught me right off guard is that this particular character, the main character in the book, is an Athenian cavalry commander who is in Alexander's army. And it doesn't say what battle he's at, although it starts with the scene of the battle of, it doesn't say which one it is, but it's probably Granicus or Isis, one of the two. Because both of those, I think, are river crossings. Because it involves a river crossing. And one of the things that it starts off with is this scene where Alexander's kind of, he's got his whole army arrayed, and he's parading in front of all his troops, going from group to group and motivating them, for this thing that's coming up. And he describes Alexander when he shows up, and he describes him being on a white horse. And I'm like, time out, end of story. Bucephalus was not white. Bucephalus was a black horse with a white star on its forehead. End of freaking story. Has that changed? Did the author just totally get something that I think is pretty obvious wrong, or has the research on that changed? I don't know. I always thought Bucephalus was a black horse with a white star. You have to see, look it up. Arian Co's successor did great detail work on Alexander's campaign. Let's see, Catherine. Oh, Charlie Murphy isn't going to be wet. Really want that game. I want to get that one and the SPQR Deluxe Edition. Yeah, the SPQR Deluxe Edition has got to have some great scenarios in there. Absolutely. Probably Granicus. Yeah. Anyhow, there's no doubt, the general of the army isn't always on a white horse. Okay. I put Caesar on a white horse. I did, but if I was going to do Alexander, and the only reason I didn't do Alexander is everybody already has that army. So, Alexander's on a black horse. End of freaking story. With a white star on his forehead. It's Bucephalus, man. It's the most famous horse. So, another video. It's on my playlist. Let's see. Do I still have that open? I do. Well, you're not on my Facebook. I posted on my Facebook page. This other guy takes these successor generals and takes them from statues and brings them to life. And it's freaking awesome. It's incredible. Unfortunately, he only does it with like 4 of them. But I thought it was amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. And it's funny. Everybody looks Greek except Alexander. Oh, nobody knows. You're just guessing at hair color unless... You're not with Alexander, but with the other guys. I'm telling you, of all the stuff that has survived, I think those busts of people are amazing. Assuming they are an accurate representation of what the person looked like, the quality they're done with is just, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how good Greek and Roman busts look. It's, and it's just one of those things you just kind of accept. Whatever. But think about it. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. How much time that took, what kind of talent that took. Just amazing. You're able to do that, but you don't have air conditioning. Hey, look, and the moral of the story is, look what amazing things people can get done if they don't have all day to surf at TikTok videos. But, I think sculpting's incredible because it is extremely unforgiving. Once you do his forehead, oh shit, I went too far. Throw this rock away, bring me another one. Or you just well, that's what he's going to look like now. I mean, I don't know how much of that is, accurate. You see any ancient artifacts up close? Got to see a traveling King Tut exhibit when it was down in Philadelphia. I didn't get to see that. I think that was really cool. I did see when I was a kid, when I was younger, there was a Egyptian art museum in in San Jose, California. Our one ill-fated trip to California, which was just a disaster. I could make a movie of that. That would have been around 1987, 86. And I remember they had a really cool Egyptian. I don't have an Egyptian army. Everybody has one. Not that that period isn't interesting. Everybody's interested in the Egyptians. But I've seen an ancient artifact up close. I have not. I want to see in my lifetime them opening the they probably won't because they're such dicks. The tomb of the first emperor of China. I think that would, you know, that's either going to be amazing or a letdown. I don't think it's going to be anywhere in the middle. I think it's going to be one of the two extremes. And seeing how much of a dick those guys are, it's probably going to either not be opened or it'll be portrayed not honestly. You know, that's the problem I have with history. Just be honest. You know, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it, and it's fascinating. But to spin it in a certain way or to change what really happened is just a disservice to everyone. Yeah, but there's a video on YouTube, and it's not by this same person, and it's like the successors brought to life or whatever, and it's amazing because it gets them breathing and blinking their eyes, and it's really amazing the kind of technology it's out there. I believe they did a movie about that, National Lampoon Vacation. Well, I didn't see any boobies, but you know, it was. I was thinking European Vacation. Man, PG-13 movies when they first came out, they were like rated R movies. They really were. Now PG-13 just, you know, they don't have any nudity and stuff like that, but all right, let's see here. Yeah, they got one battle. Talking about that SPQR one, they got one battle that involves, I think it's in there, and I forget which one it is. It's in the before the Polybian period for the Romans. The Romans have two armies. I'm getting two different armies mixed up. There's one army where the Romans are actually, I think it's the Romans that are surrounded on both sides. They're attacked from two different sides. And this is like, you know, when the Gauls were invading. And then there's another battle that I want to do that has the Samnites and the Gauls versus a double Roman army. And I think that would be really cool too. I forget what the names of those things are. I've read about them one time or a couple times. And, you know, it's things I don't rehearse. So I can't think of what they are at a moment's notice. One of those modules has two of the three of Pyrrhus's battles. The first one's pretty straightforward with the river crossing. I even did my version of it in one of the it's one of the battles of the Roman Art of War series, as Pyrrhus versus at Heraclea. The other two are shadier. Asculum and Beneventum. The other costly win and the other flat out loss. It's like, I'm leaving this place. To Greece, then. Let these Romans and Carthaginians fight over this shit. I'm out of here. Peace out. I've been painting and not really been paying attention to what I've been painting. And this is kind of mindless after a while. It's kind of like, just kind of plug along here and so the guy in his was talking about the tier ranking of the generals, and I kind of already knew this, but one thing that he mentioned was it was really unusual for those guys to die in battle because they weren't Alexander, but they were all really experienced in combat. So with the exception of, I think it was two, Craterus and one other guy that died in battle. None of them, they were either murdered or died of old age or captured and executed. And I didn't know, we were talking about Ptolemy Karanos the other day. He actually was the guy, I read a little bit more about him. He was actually the one that murdered Seleucus. So, interesting stuff. Really interesting stuff. So I do have a Seleucid army to do. Seleucid? I don't know. I've always called them Seleucid. I don't know which one it is. Use which pronunciation do you use? Do you write it in the Greek letters? I like the way the Greek letters look. I just can't read them. Doing a campaign for the control of Italy would be a fun campaign to play. Yeah. Well, I've been trying several times to try to get freaking Pyrrhus off the ground in Rome Total War, and I just can't. That poor bastard's surrounded by everybody. I can't do anything with him. I'm going to keep trying. It's difficult. Very, very difficult. He's kind of in an untenable position. I just don't have the patience for that stuff anymore. I don't even want to command the tactical battles. Where, sometimes if you're outnumbered 1-2, you can actually pull off a win. You got to be crafty, but, And that's with, same experienced troops, which is what they would be towards the beginning of the game, where they're not getting experience. Well, a lot of stuff's just inspiration for me. I'm not going to sit there and spend all weekend playing a video game. I'd spend all weekend doing this, because you'll feel good about this at the end of the day. At the video game, you're like, man, I didn't get anything accomplished. Well, I think it's high time to do successor stuff. I've put it away a long time. I've been wanting to do Pyrrhus for so freaking long. But more so to really do the other successors, because Pyrrhus pretty much fights the Romans. And I'm more interested in doing the successor on successor stuff. Alright, that's fleshy bits for that. What did we use for the harnesses on that? We used a light color, like a buff color. Is that buff? Probably. Yeah, let me use not exactly the same color. Let me go to use that dark sand, or maybe this bone color. Stopped playing video games for the most part years ago for that very reason. I always felt like I never got anything done. Now, I do play from time to time, but not every day. I don't play for very long. I don't play for very long. And it's mostly like, let me create this army and see what they decided to use for the shields. I don't agree with that, or what have you. But so the standard game, talking about Pyrrhus, the standard game, he's definitely the successor I know the most about, because I've come really close to starting his army. But did the black die? No, we still got some here. In the Rome Total War game, of course we're talking about Rome Total War 2. I played him quite a bit in the first one and was pretty successful with him, although you need to be pretty aggressive and take shit. But in the second one, he's like impossible. It's impossible to play him. There's a lot more politics in the second one and stuff like that. And he's just kind of in an untenable position. But anyhow, let's talk about his elephants. So in the standard game, his elephants are considered mercenary African elephants. And to my knowledge, they were not African. They were, that could be wrong, Indian. Didn't have very many of them, but they were Indian. And they had towers on them. Supposedly he was the first one to use used them on towers. So in the game, they're considered mercenary African elephants, and they don't have towers on them. They just have guys like kind of riding them bareback. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem right. And then I did do a mod, which is beautiful, and I forget what it's a long ass name for a mod, but it's a lot more details, and a lot of the units look a lot better. And then his elephants in that mod, they look like the right Indian kind of elephants, and they have towers, but then they have the headpieces that are typical of the Seleucid troops. So if you've seen any like Seleucid knights, cataphracts, anything like that, they'll have kind of this crossways headpiece. Almost looks like that. Almost looks like the hair of the guy off Babylon 5. Remember the guy from the Alpha Centauri? Like a crossways, kind of like a bicorn type thing on the headdress. And that is typical of Seleucid stuff, not anybody else. So if you see an elephant, or if you see a cataphract, or any Sarissa armed, not Sarissa, the Zyston armed troops, cavalry, they'll have that cross-sectional type headpiece. That's automatically assigned for Seleucid troops. So in that game, which they put a lot of detail into, the elephants are wrong as well. So by God, we're going to do the right elephants. So that was just somebody's interpretation, you know. Some things will just never be known, but I don't love elephants in combat. They're fun as hell to paint, and they're really cute, and you get to make fun noises when you play them. I mean, I guess you could always do that, but it'd be a reason to. And not to curse myself, but I guess the feed's working okay. But that's what happened, you know, a couple months ago. People were like, man, your feed's terrible. I didn't do anything different. Just like I don't do anything different when the feed works good. It's what you get. Powers that are out of my control. Let's do a little bit of wood that's on the rim of that shield. You'd rather paint figures than play video games. Me too. I just use them for motivation. I'd rather play video games than watch television now. I think television's worthless. I really think it is. Because you're making no decisions while you're watching it. It always turns out the same, whether you're watching it. I just see no value in watching television. But I'm obviously in the minority because it's still a thing. I like making decisions. So I don't know if I'd say so much. I'd rather paint figures than play with figures and not paint them. Because the problem with that is that then I'm not interested in painting anymore. Because there's no chance of them ever being used. But I'm definitely I'm more interested in painting than I am in playing, because anybody can play. And there's only a select few of us that are willing or able to. It's really willing, because it doesn't matter whether you paint well or not, as long as you're happy with the results and it's a stress-free experience. Um, I think that no matter what happens here while you're playing, while you're painting these figures, it's a positive experience. That's takes stress out of your life. Mr. Ben, yeah, did I manage to take a look at Kingdom Come? Very little. I didn't watch a video. I was watching that it's actually really inexpensive. Um, I didn't watch a video, but yes, I did look at some screenshots, and it looks. I suspect it's kind of like Elder Scrolls. Although was not a fan of Elder Scrolls at all because of just how it looked. There's some video games that you play, and I'm personally not captivated by them, regardless of how well they're received by the community, just by how they look. Pretty much anything Blizzard touches is gold, in my opinion, except which was the space one, StarCraft. I didn't care for StarCraft at all, but a huge fan of the Diablo series. And video games, unlike movies, sequels tend to be better than the original. Tend to be. Just because they add more stuff, the graphics are better, they run smoother, that kind of thing. I really detested Elder Scrolls. It looked boring. I didn't want to talk to people. Everybody looked the same. They weren't very exciting, whatever. This looks better. I may on a whim decide to get it for the console and, play it on a weekend when, the girls aren't around for a while. For me, the hobby is 60% painting, 40% gaming, and 100% social. You know what, Dirk? I'm going to say you have the proportions damn near right. Maybe 70% painting, 30% gaming, but it is all 100% social. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well put. Damn it, how are we going to have an argument if we both agree on the same thing? Jesus. You need to work on that. Absolutely. It is a social thing. It is. Unfortunately, we need the whole world to have people that are interested in this. I can't even find people in town who want to talk about history. Other than our game group. I just mean people on the street. So for the most part, I'm not necessarily an antisocial person. I just don't have things in common that I'm interested in like most people. So I need the internet and people from all over the world to, even if we were just talking about war games, it didn't necessarily have to be, DBA. I'm not opposed to other games. I just happen to play, DBA because it's just kind of happened that way. But we're a very limited group of people that, they're hard to encounter another person. And then when you do, they may be somebody that smells or they're unpleasant to be with or like to argue all the time. So it's difficult to find people that you could talk about this kind of stuff. Randy now comes and he's been visiting us pretty regularly, and he is a painter, and Joe's a painter, but Mitch is never a painter. So anything that I might have painting wise to talk about with him is deaf ears. It's like it's just not what he's into. He doesn't he can't get it. So one of the coolest things I got a chance to do at the last Historicon I went to is we were there with the guy who Mitch has gotten some painted armies from. So I call him Mitch's painter, and I walked around with him quite a bit at the vendors hall, and we looked at things that would not be of interest to Mitch because they were painting related things, products that they had there. And I really enjoyed that as going to a trade show with someone who I had a common interest in, and that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. So we will see. We'll see if that show goes on after all. I have mixed feelings about it. I'm skeptical about many things now that I was never skeptical about before, and we'll just see how it plays out. And whatever, roll with the punches or what have you. It is a long drive. It's a 14 and a half hour drive. It's a 2-day trip up, 1-day trip back. One trip up because we got to cross we got to go around DC and Baltimore, both at the time that they get around out at rush hour. If you leave at 5 in the morning here, you're at both of those places at the wrong time. So we basically have to stop somewhere in between and then go around both of them while everybody's at work. We've done that 3 or 4 times now, and it's worked pretty well. So, the Democratic Socialist Republic of Communist War Game Society. No, I'm out. Yeah, the combat is clunky. It's supposed to be based off of historical fencing manuals. The game's great for getting immersed, though. Adding P for peoples. You ever notice that when they add peoples to stuff, the peoples don't really matter? They get treated like cattle. I don't know. That sounds too restrictive for me. That goes against my libertarian sensibilities. Not to categorize myself too much, but I don't like being interfered with, you know. I like being, just leave me alone. I leave everybody else alone. Just leave me alone. I'm good here. I don't like being told what to do. I don't make bad choices, so nobody needs to be telling me what to do, you know. I've passed that point in my life. I don't really know if I had that much of a period in my life, but I certainly don't want to be told what to do by people that can't even balance a simple checkbook. They never say which people. That's the trick, yeah. I'm not into controlling people. I don't want to be controlled. Just leave us alone. We can, if we disagree on stuff, that's fine. We don't all have to, crawl into the same bed together. I don't care. I'll have to watch one of those videos to see you say combat is clunky. One game when they came out with it, I like the open world idea a lot. I'm a huge fan of that. One of the games when they were coming out that I was really excited about getting, and I just kind of lost total interest in it. I read some of the reviews, and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't get into it. I'm a big fan of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms stuff, and they made a open world one where you could play characters and stuff like that, and and it didn't get very good reviews, probably because even though I like those games, they definitely have big shortcomings. When you run out of things to find and explore, those type of games just become boring to me. But getting back to games that are well received that I don't particularly care for, I never cared for Elder Scrolls. I never cared for. I like the concept of it, but I never cared for the look of Fallout. I never cared for it. This last one, that's what's set in post-nuclear apocalypse. It's a great idea. I just didn't care for I didn't like how it looked. It didn't. It was weird. It didn't work for me. As opposed to the first Half-Life when it came out. It was already out a year or two, and on a whim, I was living alone at the time. I was in my late 20s, I guess. And on a whim, I went to the store late Sunday evening to pick it up. And I was so captivated by playing the game, I didn't even go to sleep. I played all night. And it was a Sunday night, so the next day was a work day. And that storyline at the time, I found incredible. And yeah, you look at it now and it probably looks really dated and everything. And I guess there's still people playing Counter-Strike. I couldn't believe that. Like, come on, man. It's been 20 freaking years, or maybe more than 20 years. People still playing that. But all that stuff when it came out was just incredible. I don't know if I could sit there and play a game for that long. I see through the smoke and mirrors a little bit more than I did when I was younger, and I'm like, I can't see now. Like, they come up with a new Borderlands, something like, I like the Borderlands series, and just sit there and getting it and playing a whole weekend of it. I don't know if I could do that now. I'd miss this. Be interested in painting some armies. Romance of the Three Kingdoms era. Used to play the original one. Big fan of Elder Scrolls and Fallout, but the last Fallout sucked big time. I just don't like how it looked. Elder Scrolls, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I think Elder Scrolls is a little too much role playing for me. I like a little bit less role play, more treasure hunt. I prefer the treasure hunt a little bit more. It could be fantasy. I have no problem, and I prefer fantasy to science fiction. I definitely do. But the problem I have with some fantasy games is one game that was fabulous was Dungeon Siege when it came out. And Dungeon Siege was great because you just basically pick, do you want to be male or female? And that's it. And then you had if you picked up a bow and started using the bow more, you turned into a bowman, your skills for using bows improved, so forth. Same thing with a sword, same thing with spells. Then you start using a spell, next thing you know, you can do a little bit of each and improve them all. Just kind of be like a mix, different type of character. And I thought that was really interesting, the way, the concept of that. And it was all fantasy except the goblins. The goblins in that were tinkerers. I think this was before the goblin tinkers in Warcraft, where they basically are World of Warcraft, where they're basically like the scientists that have guns and stuff like that. I never was able to finish that game because it never ran well on my computer, so it got extremely boggy, and was never able to finish it. But did play it for many, many hours and did enjoy that game quite a bit. And I like dynamic equipment. You pick up a sword that looks a certain way and you put it on your character, and it should look like that. Armor, that's a lot of programming, but that's a huge part of the immersion for me, is picking up something that looks a certain way, and when you put it on your character, it looks that same way as well. So, yeah, but anyways, getting back to why I don't like science fiction very much is there'll be something that'll be like, it'll be in the future, but like the technology for something is like behind what we have now. Like BattleTech is a great example. BattleTech's a great game, and the video game for BattleTech is a great game, but the weapons now are a lot more accurate than those weapons are. So, your big JRPG. I'm not sure what that is. I don't know. What's the J part? You enjoy a good role-playing game and are fantasy fans, so Elder Scrolls I don't know what J means. Japanese. I don't know what that. Oh, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, similar games. Okay. Can't say that I've ever played any of those. Wouldn't would Resident Evil be considered one of those? Not that I've played it, but it's definitely of that style. I was watching a demo one time. I got scared watching a demo, and it was called something like "The Evil Within Us" or something like that. The Evil something or something like that. And it's got some on the cover of the game. It has like some tortured looking individual, and I'm watching it, and this character. It's not even in first person view. It's in third person, and this person is like crawl. You can't see shit, and they're like crawling around somewhere, and there's some demonic looking creature that you're armed with like nothing, and this demonic looking creature just pops out. And I'm like, I can't watch this video anymore. It's too stressful. And how do you play something like that? Like, I can't handle that. Turn based RPG games. Okay. Final Fantasy is turn based. Resident Evil is a completely different style. It's first person horror survival. Yeah, I don't need that stuff in my life, man. I'm telling you. I remember I grew up playing those shooters, and I remember playing Doom with a friend of mine. I failed a morale check playing a game. And just been like, you look at it now, I'm like, that was stupid. But I guess that's part of your enjoyment. When you're enjoying a game that much that it's affecting you, yeah. Yeah, I can't say I ever played Final Fantasy. It's mostly, I think, for PlayStation type stuff, and I never had one of those. They lost the bid there. Actually, at one time you could rent them both. You could go to like Blockbuster and either rent an Xbox or a PlayStation. I rented them both because I didn't know which one I wanted to get, and the Xbox won out because I liked the games that the Xbox was pushing more than the PlayStation games. Really, that's the only reason. At the time, I was a big Sony fan, so had Sony TV, and I got to be careful here what I do. Let's. This is a little too light, I think, and it just didn't go with that. So the rest is kind of history. But most games are like crossover type stuff, anyways. But one of my favorite games, and there's been games that I have played. I played once and I'm like, this isn't for me. And then there's ones that have been really, really are my cup of tea, and none of them are what I would call scary games. One of my favorite ones is State of Decay. It's a Microsoft only game, and it's a zombie game, but it also has treasure hunting type stuff in it, along with management of communities and stuff like that. And I've had scary moments in it, although it's not a scary game per se. But yeah, I watched that one demo, that one game. I'm like, I can't play this. Or I think I played the demo of Dying Light or something like that. And I'm like, these fast zombies with me not being able to know what I'm doing is just a bad combination. It's just not for me. what was that one I saw somebody play one time? Left 4 Dead. The concept looked really cool. Way too stressful. Way too stressful. I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. And I mentioned this earlier, but with the VR thing, that Walking Dead game, that's a pretty cool game. But the fact that everything is so destructive. I mean, a baseball bat is only good to bash in like 5 zombies. And then the next thing you know, you got to make sure you've got enough supplies to build another one. Or you're going to be fighting with, your hands, which is not a winning situation. It just got way too stressful. You could deal with like 2 zombies at once. So, you fall back or whatever. But the fact that, I turned a corner and there was 6 of them and nowhere to fall back into. And the game cheats. Like, things appear behind you where they couldn't have gotten there to begin with. That's too uncomfortable. I don't need that kind of stress in my life. So I stopped playing it after putting in several hours of it. But it's a great game. It's, I wouldn't necessarily say it was a scary game, but I did go into this underground thing where something could have grabbed you at any moment. It was extremely stressful, and I'm like, I don't need that in my life anymore. I had to look at the Oculus Walking Dead. I can honestly say stay with. Oh, I have it. I won't like it at all. Actually, I did like it. I did like it a lot. I just didn't. And any video you watch of it, of any of those Oculus games, are not accurate. They look much better on the actual Oculus than the actual game. But there was another one that I downloaded. And the good thing about the Oculus games, if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. You try it for a little bit. Why is America infatuated with a zombie apocalypse? I don't know. It's more interesting than superheroes, which they're also fascinated with. I don't know. People are stupid. What's big in England? Work in the morning, time for bed. All right, man. See you tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know why people like the zombie. I don't care about the zombie part. I like the fact that things aren't working and you need to kind of survive. The fact that it's zombies is, I don't know. I think zombies are still better than superheroes, though. Superheroes are just stupid for the most part. All right, we're going to give this guy, we're going to do all 4 socks on this one. The worst thing on TV, though, in my experience, that's ever been on TV is reality shows. It's not even close. Reality shows is absolutely the worst thing that was ever created for television. And the reason why is the worst thing that was created for television is because they're not really reality. They're scripted. We like to visit historical sites. Well, people like to visit historical sites here, but that's not most people. So what do people in the UK listen? Are they obsessed with that? The silly reality shows they have. I hate reality shows because they're scripted. It's not like, hidden camera. Ever since the first one, even Survivor. Survivor should be put everybody on an island. There's hidden cameras. The boat comes in a week. We're only picking up one of you. End of story. Nothing scripted. If people get murdered, well, you signed up for it. Either that or, change the name of the series. Change it to, I'm not the most popular bitch on the island. Or, whatever you want it to be. But I hate reality shows. It's like wrestling. They're as realistic as wrestling. Yeah, everything's already predetermined how it's going to turn out. Those fake interviews. Well, I thought Bobby was going to do this, that, or the other. It's just a bunch of horse shit. Nothing is worse than that, in my opinion. Can't get into superheroes think they're stupid, as you say. Do like Batman, but that's where I draw a line. Yeah. Note to self: don't sign up for one of Tony's reality shows. Yeah. You know, a lot of those reality shows, like those Survivors, should be called, "Hey, let's get cute girls with no shame to do things that are shameful and laugh about it." You know, like, hey, or what's the other one? Fear Factor. We need you to eat like a pound of dog food, and then let's get some pretty girl to eat a pound of dog food. I mean, who the hell wants to see that? Would you watch Catherine Winnick eat a can of dog food on camera just for jollies? Maybe, I don't know. I gotta find this color horse. Well, this isn't it. It's probably one of the other ones. I can get close. It doesn't have to be. I think it was London Gray. Town I'm from goes crazy for 1 week of their name year's local festival where the children get dressed up in fancy costume. Oh, Mountain Men. I will watch American Pickers. I can't watch any of that stuff. It also, the History Channel. Oh man, we get the History Channels. What does a freaking, what does like a pawn shop thing have to do with history? It just stupid stuff, man. That's what I say. It's very difficult to find people that have the same interest that I do. Most people like, things I'm just have zero interest in. You know, what do you do all day? Oh, I'll sit all day and watch sports. I'd rather go to work. I don't like going to work. Just about any video game is better than watching television. You at least are making decisions. You're like, hey, I wonder what's in that cabin. Now climb your ass up the freaking mountain and find out. It's an adventure. It's an adventure. But the common population doesn't get what we do. I've had conversations with people that, well, what do you do? I do historical wargaming. Oh, is that like reenactment? No, it's like playing with with soldiers that you research and you do historical battles. And their first reaction is like, why would you want to do that? You already know what's going to happen. Which the correct reply is, well, why the hell do people want to wear a freaking wool uniform and reenact, stuff in real life and suffer the whole time they're doing it? But no, they don't realize that it involves, dice and stuff, and it doesn't always turn out the same way, and you get to make meaningful decisions. And I would do this, the stuff that we all know that other people were like, do what? I'm like, yeah, people don't get this. There's so much to this hobby. It's I don't know. We're from a different world. Board town thing, checking marching stones, dressing up, and getting drunk for the adults. Kids getting drunk for the adults. One of the worst things about this country is its hang up with alcohol. I just don't get it. And I don't even drink, but I don't have a problem with people under 21 drinking. It's a cultural thing for me. So, and this is coming from somebody that I rarely ever drink. I don't have anything against it. I actually become a better person when I do. Don't stay awake as long, but wouldn't ride on a horse as a white knight and rescue her from such. Watching World War documentaries that history puts out earlier. My God, they're so awful. They are. So many inaccuracies, not even funny. Interesting. Theodore goes back to the time of William Wallace. Most people are ignorant. They are. They don't do historical dress. It's themed to a lorry. Oh, I love that word. Well, let's get into lorry. What's this for pageant? The Lanimers is a pageant. Hoof color should be in this zone. Should be this one. There it is. Stoner gray. Far out. Yeah, this guy had like a vape thing or something in the car, in the dream. I'm like, that's probably my first drug dream ever. And I still didn't do them. And I'm fine if people want to do drugs. I don't need to smell that shit, you know? I just know that if I was going to do drugs, I would do stuff that would make me more productive. Like, what can I do to get all my armies painted tonight? You know? I want to be productive, not sit around and eat and get munchy. I mean, I can already do that on my own. What drugs can I take to get all of my armies painted in a weekend? Well, okay? I don't want to paint them, crappy. I want to have a sense of accomplishment. I have a feeling that if there was such a thing, it would give you the jitters so bad you wouldn't be able to paint well. You know what they should bring back? That miniature wargaming show they had on TV over there. You could find it if you search Battleground TV show miniatures. Nothing worse than smelling someone else's drugs. Yeah, that's a problem on the beaches all the time now. You know? Could do a 24-hour challenge and stay up for. I'd lose. I wouldn't be able to get that much done. I'm slow. I'm a slow painter. And interacting with you guys makes me slower. But it keeps me on task. If I wasn't filming this, I would have gone off and done something else by now. you know. So, well, here's the second Norman. What's his name? First guy is Norman the Norman. Same pose. I did that on purpose. So, well, it looks like crap. You can't see shit with that. There we go. Oh, can't see shit. Here we go. Old TTG figures. Oh, shit. We're going to put some freckles on this horse's ass. One of my favorite things to do. So all we're going to do is just get a color that's close. I don't know if this is considered freckles, but I'll call them freckles. Couple up there. Okay. Now, the next pose. Now I've got an army of paints that have come out to play. Unfortunately. Well, we need to clean this shit up. Definitely. Oh, this got all limp and stuff, huh? I wonder why. I wonder why this is rotating that way. Well, that's not what you do. There we go. It works in this direction. It doesn't in the other one. Ah, cheap Chinese shit. Can't get the good stuff anymore. Eric the Norman. Eric the Cleric. That's never thought about that. Eric, who are you playing? Eric the Cleric. Eric, Derek, and Cleric. A new series on TV. All right. What candidates do we have left? We got 4 of them. We're going to replace one of them because I'm going to use him in my pre-feudal Scots army. This guy looks too cool to not be in the Scottish army. He's got one hell of a beard. Let's see if I can get a good... This guy's too cool. So we're not going to use him as one of the Normans. We'll use him in the Scottish, feudal Scots army. I came across him and I'm like, oh, this guy looks too cool. Nope. That guy's a Turk. All right, we got one guy with his lance up. 2 guys with their spear. I guess I shouldn't call these guys lances. I should call them spears. That's basically what they are. We'll do one of these guys here. All right, we're gonna need to get another Coke or some beverage. I'll get a refill of water, get a Coke, and I'll be right back. Small intermission here. Scottish borders. I'm about where my mother's mother's family comes from. That's somebody I work with recently. Actually, they've worked there a while. I had a conversation with them and realized that they were adopted. And they didn't know who their parents were or where they even came from. Like, what? That's just unfathomable. Unfathomable. To not know if you're Irish, Italian. Crazy. Crazy. Well, better them than me. I'm glad I don't have that. Whew. It doesn't matter where you're from. It's just not knowing. Just not knowing. All right. How'd this guy not get dry brushed? Well, maybe I did dry brush him, just didn't do a very good job. No, there's that. Yeah, I think that's more of that than anything else. All right, well, time to rectify that. God, what a mess. I'm not going to wipe it down. I may need some of that paint. Good DNA test can tell you pretty close where your ancestors are from. Yeah, if they do. I don't want to do that. I might find out I'm something I don't want to be. Yeah, like if you did that, you did a DNA test and you found out you're related to one of the people that conquered Mexico. You didn't want to know that. You have to start gaming that. I guess at some point I need to wash this thing out. Wash. The DNA testing isn't going to tell me what I want to know. I'm going to want more specific stuff than that. I can figure the DNA testing out on my own. Enough to the. I want like family history stuff, and that just some of that stuff just doesn't exist because it wasn't recorded or whatever. But where do you come from? In my case, is pretty simple. So I'm going to have to take something to this because there's little bits of paint that just happen. And I don't like to see them there. And I didn't even pay for this thing. That's how protective I am of them. These things are expensive. These cutting things, they're like freaking $30 for something. All right. Let us. Oh, we're going to need more black than that. We're going to need more black than that. There we go. Make sure we have a good base to start from. I'm not worried about paint adhesion that much. We've got lots of coats of sealant that go on this, and we're pretty darn careful with these things. Occasionally they chip up, but it happens. I'm just glad I'm not from the UK, because, I heard recently, looking at one of the, like I mentioned earlier, I saw this article that was the 10 worst civilizations ever, and the English Commonwealth was one of the top 3. Absurd. Bunch of revisionist turds. I couldn't believe that. It's some kind of sick joke. Okay, man. Have a good night. I assume that you haven't gone to sleep yet, so hope you even if you go to bed now, you'll still be up. You'll still be back up today. Oh, you take that back. You have about 20 minutes till my phone is done charging and you shall depart. It's because I mentioned the whole British Empire being one of the worst civilizations yet. I'm sure you're going to have to chime in on that. I couldn't believe that. I thought it was like a freaking sick joke. Oh. Crazy talk. They were ranked higher than the Mongols in this particular thing. I couldn't believe that. I think one of them had Alexander the Great. Come on, man. He thought he was a god. He was just doing what gods do, right? Fight! The British Empire was not a great place to live for non-British people. Really? Huh? Top 10? Top 10 worst empires? Come on. Not even close. They gave up slavery. What about places that never gave it up? I think they were better than my people. I think my people did a lot of stupid stuff. I don't think my people were one of the top 10 worst. But I think the British Empire was probably better than my people. People say Americans are racist. Well, take a look at the stuff the British... Everybody's been racist. I'm not going to apologize for shit I didn't do. I just have a problem with that. I have a chip on my shoulder about that. If I'm going to feel guilty about shit my ancestors did, then I want to experience some of that stuff as well. I want to abuse people. Oh, I don't get to do that? Well, then I'm not going to, you wouldn't make those things now. I wouldn't own people or take all their gold. I don't want to take other people's possessions. I'd still probably want to kill people that did human sacrifice, though. That one's probably still true, but I have no interest in taking other people's possessions. know, you spend part of your life working for things that you buy. So therefore, you know, they are kind of taking somebody's life. I mean, they aren't, and they are, and they're not. But you know, I don't want to take other people's stuff. Yeah, I won't be held accountable for my ancestors did. Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't do that stuff now. Oh, this guy's got a different helmet. He's got kind of like the reinforcing strips on there. Okay, what color horse? Let's do a horse we haven't done in a long time. My favorite color horse of all. And I'm not going to do research to find out how many the Normans had any one of these. They had at least one of them, and this is him. My favorite color horse of all time, Cavalry Brown. This reddish one. All right. So you disagree that Alexander was a bad guy? I don't think he was a bad guy. I think he was just power hungry. I think Alexander's kind of like Napoleon. I don't think Napoleon was a bad guy. I just think he wanted to fight and get into wars. So Napoleon actually comes across in a lot of polls when I was doing the finding out who people thought was the best general ever. He comes up as the top one in most polls. And I don't know much about him. He's just of the wrong period, you know. He comes up over Alexander. Oh no! I just don't do Napoleonic stuff, you know. Boy, this thing needs a trim. This thing's all over the place. Let's take that off. I'm the moil of brushes. Got a bit too much there. Let's take that off. Okay, that's a little bit more reasonable. Oh, we've used this thing a lot. It's not like there's one use and I'm trimming it. I wouldn't have trimmed it if it didn't start misbehaving. I'm just curious to see how long one of those Winsor and Newton things lasts. I don't think I take particularly bad care of brushes. I'm not opposed to cleaning them multiple times. Just paint all this, all in this beautiful reddish color. A ginger horse. I think the first horse I ever painted was in this color. I still have it. The first horse I ever painted. some of my Armati figures. It was in the same army. It was a for he's the hey look, the good guys. Suck it. Look at that primitive basing. Oh, they are here. Just one guy fell off. Got it. Thought so. Guess I need to get. Those were painted around 1996. 1995, 1996, something like that. These are the first figures I ever painted. Before that, it was all, that guy broke off. Here was a cannon crew. And the cannon is here, and the cannon's of the wrong period. This is like a 1600s cannon. Super glued down. And the first horses I ever painted was this stand, a light horse. He fell off too. No, he's not staying on there. These are the first figures I ever painted in 15 millimeter. Well, or any scale, because before this was all tanks and ships and all that kind of stuff. And these were some of the first figures I ever used doing kind of the painting method that I use now. It's a little bit more rustic than the stuff I do now, but at some point, these guys are going to end up getting repurposed. These are Gladiator Games guys. These are Essex guys. Whenever I do my Kandata army, I'm going to take these guys and redo them. And I don't mean just pop them off the base. I mean just completely repaint them. Sword and bucklermen. This is supposed to be a Renaissance Spanish army. I would never use these helmets for a Renaissance Spanish army at this point. This is earlier period than that. Anywho, here's the red color horse. It was the first horse I painted, was this guy right here. Actually, the second one, this guy's got little dots. Anyhow, blast from the past. I look at these now and I'm like, I'm not proud of that shit. These look like crap. Well, more than half of the problem is the basing. And I was playing intro Armati, so a unit of pikemen could be like this, or you could split them in half and make them like this. So, talk about not giving the feel of a massed unit, that would be it. 4 figures for a pike block. That just doesn't do it. Different times. On to my Norman. Okay. An unnecessary sidetrack, but a sidetrack nonetheless. Yeah, we've come a long way. It's hard to get motivated to paint figures for a game system you've never played. That, you're trying to paint by yourself. It's boring. I'm getting bored thinking about it. Something a little bit more able to get in between here. There we go. Did I end up brushing this guy? I don't remember. It seems like I did because it doesn't look as bad as I remember it a little while ago. Oh, I could be wrong. This is one of these colors that has a huge, white has a huge impact on how it looks. All right, we're going to leave this guy as is. What are you looking like time-wise? 8:30? All right, almost exactly 3 hours. So we're going to call this one done, especially since we only got one viewer. So thanks for stopping by, folks. And